All the alien women were stunned by his impressive strength. In the distant reaches of the galaxy, on a space station orbiting the planet Ilyara, a human named Mark found himself in unfamiliar territory. Unlike most humans, Mark was part of an elite team of emissaries sent by Earth to foster alliances with alien species, especially those from the coalition of allied planets, the Ilyarans, a race known for their grace, beauty, and extraordinary psychic abilities, were the latest allies Earth hoped to impress. Their physical strength, however, was famously delicate. They possessed slender, ethereal bodies that moved with elegance rather than force. Mark's presence caused quite a stir among the Ilyaran delegation, especially the female representatives who were unused to humans. Tall and muscular, he looked like a strange marvel next to their lithe frames. They couldn't help but whisper to one another, their soft voices fluttering through the meeting hall as they watched him from across the room. One such alien was Tlani, a diplomatic advisor for the Ilyaran High Council. She stood near the entrance with her peers, observing Mark with a curious expression. Like many Ilyarans, Tlani was accustomed to interactions being conducted through a blend of telepathy and mental projections, as physical actions often held little meaning to her people. However, Mark was a vivid exception, both in his expressive nature and his undeniable physical presence. The day's agenda was simple: demonstrate Earth's support capabilities through a joint training exercise designed to simulate a planetary evacuation in hostile conditions. Mark and the Ilyarans would need to carry supplies, navigate difficult terrain, and, most importantly, work together under pressure. The Ilyarans approached this exercise with apprehension. They relied heavily on their psychic connections and, for lack of a better word, floated through life with minimal physical exertion. For them, anything that required strength was an entirely alien concept. As the exercise began, Mark took the lead, hoisting a pack of provisions that weighed almost as much as one of the Ilyaran assistants. Tlani watched, wide-eyed, as Mark adjusted the heavy pack on his shoulders with ease, a slight smile playing on his face as he noticed the curious glances cast in his direction. In Ilyaran terms, it was a feat no one had ever seen before. "Is this normal among humans?" Tlani whispered to one of her colleagues, her wide, iridescent eyes reflecting her surprise. Her colleague nodded, just as stunned. "They say humans are born on a world of gravity many times stronger than ours. Perhaps this is common for them?" Mark glanced back, catching Tlani's gaze with a casual smile. He wasn't used to being an object of fascination, but the attention felt oddly flattering. He adjusted the pack with one arm and continued leading the group down the rugged path, stepping over rocks and under branches that seemed challenging for the Ilyarans. At one point, when Tlani stumbled slightly over a root, Mark reached out instinctively, his hand closing around her arm to steady her. The alien gasped softly, feeling a wave of unexpected strength pulse through his grip, a sensation that felt both foreign and exhilarating. "You all right?" Mark asked gently, his voice deep and grounding in her mind, contrasting sharply with the airy, telepathic whispers of her fellow Ilyarans. She nodded, her eyes widening even more as she felt the remnants of his touch linger, almost like an energy transfer. As they continued onward, the group of alien women glanced at each other, silently sharing the same thought. If human strength was truly like this, how much more was there left to understand about them? As the training exercise progressed, the terrain became increasingly challenging. Rocky outcrops jutted from the landscape, and thick roots snaked across the ground, making it treacherous for the delicate Ilyaran delegation to navigate. Mark noticed how each step seemed to drain his companions, particularly the Ilyaran women, who were clearly not accustomed to such physical strain. Tlani, in particular, struggled to keep pace, though she wore an expression of determined composure. "Here, let me help with that," Mark said, noticing her struggle with her small supply pack. Before she could protest, he lifted the pack with ease and slung it over his own shoulder alongside his own massive load. Tlani blinked in amazement. It took 3 of us to lift that onto my back," she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. She looked at her companions, who exchanged equally astonished glances. To them, Mark's effortless strength was almost otherworldly. "It's nothing, really," Mark replied with a modest shrug. "You get used to this kind of thing back on Earth. Lots of gravity, tough weather, it makes us strong." Tlani walked beside him, watching him intently as he navigated the rugged trail. "Humanity sounds different than we imagined. We knew of your strength, of course, but seeing it firsthand is something else. I had no idea that a race could evolve this way, relying on physical force rather than psychic ability." Mark laughed, a deep, resonant sound that echoed across the landscape. It's just how we are. You all have amazing mental powers, which we could never match, so I guess this is our way of keeping up. Their conversation continued as they walked, with Tlani peppering him with questions about Earth, its people, and their seemingly boundless resilience. Soon, the exercise hit its most grueling segment, a steep ascent up a rocky hill. It was designed to simulate a planet's shifting, unstable terrain under extreme gravitational conditions, something the Illyarans dreaded but had to experience as part of the exercise. Most of the Ilyaran team hesitated at the foot of the hill, their graceful bodies ill-suited for such intense climbing. Seeing their hesitation, Mark turned back, holding out his hand toward Tlani. "Would it be all right if I carried you?" he asked, his tone respectful. "This climb will be rough, and I don't want anyone getting hurt." Tlani stared at his hand, an expression of awe and apprehension on her face. For an Ilyaran, relying on physical assistance from another being, especially a human, was an unusual and humbling gesture. But she nodded, accepting his offer. Mark lifted her with the ease of someone hoisting a feather, his grip steady and warm. He could feel her heartbeat flutter against his chest as he began to climb, and she instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck, her silver blue eyes wide with amazement. As they ascended, her mind opened slightly to his, and he caught flashes of her thoughts, tinges of admiration mixed with disbelief, all wrapped in a swirling aura of wonder. She seemed utterly captivated by his strength, even as she struggled to fully understand it. At the top of the hill, Mark set Tlani down carefully, and she took a moment to steady herself, her gaze fixed on him as though seeing him for the first time. "Your people," she began, her voice soft, "you're more than I expected. You're different, and yet somehow, you seem perfectly at home here." Mark smiled, gazing out over the vast alien landscape. "I guess strength isn't just about muscles, it's about how we adapt. Sometimes, the universe throws us into things we can't control, and we just have to find our way through." As the group regrouped, the other Ilyaran women glanced shyly at Mark, each one reflecting Tlani's awe and curiosity. It was clear that Mark had left an impression on them, one that defied their preconceptions and left them wondering about the nature of humanity. For the rest of the exercise, the Ilyaran women watched him closely, not just as a powerful being from another world, but as a living mystery, someone who had survived and thrived in ways they were only beginning to comprehend. And as the sun set over the alien horizon, Mark found himself reflecting on them too, realizing that he'd earned not only their respect but also their fascination, in ways he hadn't expected. As night settled over the rugged training grounds, the alien landscape was bathed in a soft, bioluminescent glow from the flora native to Ilyara. The Ilyaran women, usually in tune with their environment through psychic resonance, felt the fatigue of the day's exercise weighing heavily on them. They gathered around a campfire Mark had set up, unfamiliar with the concept but mesmerized by the flickering flames. Mark was demonstrating how to prepare an Earth-style meal from the field rations they'd brought, adding some local herbs he'd learned were safe. The Ilyarans watched him closely, fascinated by his hands, rough and capable, moving deftly over the supplies. Tlani, still processing the experience of being carried up the hill, sat near him, her curiosity uncontainable. "Tell us, Mark, why do humans rely so much on physical strength and tools? For us, it seems like such unrefined work." Mark chuckled, pausing to stir the contents of his makeshift pot. "It's just how we've adapted, I guess. Back on Earth, we've had to face things, wild animals, harsh climates, diseases, without the help of psychic abilities. Strength, tools, and teamwork became our way of survival. Each struggle made us stronger, just like the way your people rely on their minds to navigate life. We rely on our bodies." One of the Ilyaran women, a diplomat named Sarah, leaned forward, her violet eyes wide with interest. "So, every human develops this power? Is it a result of your gravity, your evolutionary path, or something else?" Mark pondered her question thoughtfully. "A little bit of everything, I think. For some, strength means lifting heavy things. For others, it's about protecting the people they care about or pushing through tough situations. You'd be surprised how strong some people are, even if they don't look it." The Ilyaran women exchanged glances, considering his words. In their society, the concept of physical resilience was often disregarded in favor of mental and psychic abilities. To see it embodied so tangibly in a single human made them reconsider their ideas of strength and vulnerability. As they ate, the conversation turned to their shared training. The next day, they'd be attempting a team-based obstacle course, one that required coordination and speed. For the Illyarans, teamwork meant mental synchronization. For humans, it was a more hands-on experience, and Mark's role as the lead was more than just symbolic. The Ilyaran women quietly worried about their ability to keep up, knowing that the course was designed to be challenging even by human standards. Sensing their apprehension, Mark spoke up, a reassuring tone in his voice. "Look, tomorrow's going to be tough, but we've got this. Just remember, I'm here to help. Lean on me if you need to, literally or not," he added with a wink. Tlani smiled, comforted by his confidence, but also intrigued by the idea of leaning on someone physically. In their culture, support was a mental exchange. To rely on another's strength, as she had on the hill, was a vulnerable but exhilarating experience. When dawn arrived, the group gathered at the obstacle course, a sprawling maze of hurdles, rope climbs, and physical challenges that wound through the thick alien forest. The first leg required the team to cross a series of elevated platforms connected by rope bridges. The Ilyarans, with their natural grace and light steps, excelled initially, crossing the bridges with ease. However, the next section involved moving large rocks to clear a pathway, something well beyond their physical capabilities. The Ilyaran women looked at the massive stones in confusion, until Mark stepped forward, easily hefting one rock after another to create a cleared path. Tlani couldn't help but stare as he worked, each movement a display of raw strength. Her respect for him deepened with each lift, and soon the group was back on track, tackling the course with renewed determination. The final part of the course was a steep, muddy incline that required a unique blend of agility and grit. As they reached the hill, Tlania's foot slipped on a loose patch of mud, and she nearly tumbled back, but Mark was there in an instant. He caught her arm, steadying her once again, his fingers curling firmly around her forearm. "Come on, Tlani," he said with a smile, "we're almost there, just a little bit more." With his help, she made it to the top, and one by one, he aided the others as well, lifting, supporting, and encouraging until the entire group stood together, victorious. Breathless and exhilarated, the Ilyaran women shared a moment of triumphant awe, realizing that they had completed something that had seemed impossible. Tlani looked at Mark, admiration shining in her eyes. "You taught us something today, Mark," she said softly. "You showed us that strength isn't something we should fear or dismiss, it's something we can rely on, something noble." Mark laughed, scratching the back of his head. "I'm just glad I could help. Besides, I think you all are a lot stronger than you realize." As they made their way back to camp, the Ilyaran women glanced at him with newfound respect and curiosity. For them, Mark had become more than just an emissary. He was a bridge between their worlds, showing them that strength could come in many forms and that reliance on one another, whether through mind, heart, or body, was a bond that transcended species. And as the stars twinkled above, Mark knew that his place among these alien allies was only just beginning, and that he had left a lasting mark, not just as a human among Ilyarans, but as a friend who had taught them the value of strength and resilience in a universe filled with endless possibilities. As the days passed, the Ilyaran delegation grew closer to Mark, their initial fascination with him evolving into a deep sense of camaraderie. Each day brought new challenges and exercises designed to help humans and Ilyarans understand one another's strengths and limits, though it was becoming increasingly clear that both groups had their unique ways of approaching the world. Mark, in turn, had come to appreciate the psychic abilities of the Ilyarans. He noticed that they communicated in layered thoughts, intricate and complex, more expressive than spoken words could ever be. Tlani, especially, had a way of conveying emotions and ideas that Mark felt without needing to hear. Often, he'd glance over to find her watching him, her eyes reflecting thoughts he could only guess at. One evening, after another long training session, the group gathered near the edge of a cliff that overlooked the iridescent forests of Ilyara. The view was breathtaking, with glowing flora spreading as far as the eye could see, bathing the land in an otherworldly light. Mark sat beside Tlani, who had grown comfortable enough to sit close, allowing their energies to mingle, as was custom among friends on her world. They sat in silence for a while, watching the lights pulse and shift in the forest below. "I didn't realize how much our worlds differ until I met you, Mark," Tlani said quietly, breaking the silence. Her voice was thoughtful, and her gaze softened as she turned to him. "When we first learned about humans, I thought of you as dangerous. Primitive, even. But you've shown us that you're anything but that. Your strength, it's gentle. Mark laughed softly, surprised by her words. I'm not sure anyone's called me gentle before, he admitted. But thank you. I think I've learned a lot from you all, too. The way you connect with each other, with your world, it's beautiful. I'm glad we're allies. Tlani gave him a small smile, a rare, genuine expression among the usually reserved Illyarans. She paused, as if considering something deeply, before she spoke again. Mark, I want to show you something, she said, holding out her hand. It's not something we usually share, but you've shown me a different kind of strength. It only seems fair I share a part of ours. Curious, Mark reached out and took her hand, feeling the warmth of her slender fingers wrap around his. In an instant, a subtle hum began to fill his mind, and he realized she was extending her psychic abilities, gently letting him into her mental world. Visions and feelings surged forward, unfamiliar but inviting, a blend of emotions, memories, and impressions of the Illyaren culture. Mark gasped softly, caught off guard by the vividness of it all. He saw flashes of Tlani's life, her early training as an advisor, her childhood spent learning the ways of Illyaren society, and her early skepticism about humans. He felt her thoughts of admiration, curiosity, and even the wonder she held for his strength. Her memories flowed seamlessly, an intimate exchange that felt as though she was opening her very soul to him. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the connection softened. Mark blinked, his mind still swimming from the raw, beautiful imagery he had experienced. Wow, he breathed, looking at Tlani with awe. That was incredible. I never imagined what it's like to be inside someone's mind like that. Tlani nodded, a gentle warmth radiating from her. It's a privilege we rarely extend, but I felt you deserved to see. You've shown me the beauty of physical resilience, so I wanted you to experience the strength of connection. Just then, a noise echoed from the far side of the forest, a sharp, unnatural sound that set everyone on alert. Mark stood up, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. The Illyarans rose with him, their serene expressions replaced by apprehension. They had heard rumors of rival factions on Ilyara, groups opposed to the coalition and, by extension, to Earth's presence. The night seemed to grow colder, the forest around them shifting in uneasy silence. Mark's voice was low, steady. Stay close. We don't know what's out there, but whatever it is, we'll handle it together. The Illyarans formed a tight circle, their psychic energies linked as they synchronized their awareness, creating a mental map that Mark knew he couldn't fully understand but trusted instinctively. Tlani stayed close to his side, her confidence in him evident even in her posture. As they moved quietly, her gaze turned to Mark, and in that look, he felt her resolve, that same mix of admiration and trust that had grown between them. Minutes passed as they moved through the forest, alert for any sign of danger. Then, in a flash, a group of figures emerged from the shadows, alien warriors with armor that shimmered like obsidian in the low light. They were members of a separatist faction, hostile to the coalition, and their faces twisted into sneers as they saw the humans and Illyarans together. Without hesitation, Mark stepped forward, his stance protective. The separatist leader, a tall, imposing figure with sharp, piercing eyes, spoke in a guttural tone. You humans are unworthy of our alliance, he sneered. You pollute our world with your brute ways. Mark clenched his fists but kept his voice steady. We're here to build bridges, not to fight. But if you're here to threaten my friends, then you'll have to go through me. Tlani, standing beside him, raised her hand, her psychic energy flaring in a brilliant, silver light. The separatists hesitated, momentarily thrown by the united front of human strength and Illyran's psychic power. Realizing he couldn't intimidate them, the leader let out a frustrated snarl and signaled his retreat, but not before glaring at Mark and Tlani with a promise of future conflict. As they disappeared into the shadows, Mark exhaled, the tension draining from his shoulders. Tlani lowered her hand, her gaze lingering on him with admiration. Your strength wasn't just in your body today, Mark. It was in your loyalty and courage, she said quietly. You protected us not just because of duty, but because you care. That's something rare in this galaxy. Mark looked at her, feeling a surge of gratitude. And you've shown me that strength isn't about how much you can lift or how hard you can fight. It's about trust, connection, and standing together, no matter what. As they walked back to camp, side by side, both human and Illyran understood that something fundamental had shifted between them. They weren't just allies by political ties but by the bond they had forged through shared challenges, mutual respect, and the promise to face whatever lay ahead together. And, under the stars of an alien sky, they knew that this friendship marked the beginning of a new era for both their worlds. The days that followed brought Mark and the Illyran team closer than ever. Word of the confrontation with the Separatists spread through the space station, solidifying respect and trust between the human and Illyran delegations. For Mark, this alliance had shifted from a diplomatic mission to something deeply personal. He could see it in Tlania's steady gaze, in the shared smiles of the other Illyran women, and in the easy camaraderie that had grown between them all. One evening, as they were gathered around their now regular campfire, Tlani approached him with a quiet look that Mark had come to recognize as a mixture of curiosity and admiration. "Mark," she began, her tone thoughtful, "we've learned a lot from each other, but there is still one thing I can't understand." He looked at her, raising an eyebrow. "What's that?" Tlani took a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Humans have this spark. It's more than resilience or courage. It's a drive, an intensity, almost a defiance against the odds. Why are you so determined? What makes you keep going, even when things seem impossible?" Mark considered her question, his gaze turning to the flickering flames of the fire. "I think it's just hope. Back on Earth, things aren't easy. Our world is full of challenges, but I think that's what makes us fight to make things better. Even if it's hard, we believe there's always a chance things can improve, and we fight for each other because we know that, together, we're stronger." Tlani listened, her expression shifting to one of deep respect. "Hope," she echoed, as if tasting the word. "I think that's something we've lost over the years. Our society has always been stable, orderly, but maybe, in seeking control, we lost that spark you describe." Just then, an urgent alert sounded through the camp. A message flashed on their communication devices, displaying a distress signal from an Illyran colony outpost on the edge of Coalition space. The Separatists were staging an attack, hoping to sever Ilyara's connection to its allies. The outpost was critical to their operations, and if it fell, it would jeopardize not only Ilyara but potentially the entire coalition. Mark's eyes met Tlani's, both recognizing the gravity of the situation. This was more than just a skirmish, it was a battle for the future of their alliance. Without hesitation, Mark and the Illyran team boarded their shuttle, setting coordinates for the outpost. The journey was tense, and Mark could feel the anxiety radiating from his companions. Tlani, who had been so composed, now wore an expression of uncertainty. He reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We've got this. Just remember what we talked about. Hope isn't about knowing the outcome, it's about believing we can make a difference." As the shuttle approached the outpost, they could see plumes of smoke rising from the main compound. The Separatists' ships hovered above, firing blasts into the structure below. The team quickly armed themselves, steeling for what lay ahead. They touched down amid the chaos, Mark taking the lead as they navigated through the wreckage. The Separatists were everywhere, and the sound of blasters filled the air. Mark moved swiftly, covering the Ilyarans as they used their psychic abilities to disorient the enemy, creating openings for him to strike. At one point, a Separatist charged at Tlani from behind, but Mark intercepted the attacker with a swift, powerful blow, knocking him out cold. Tlani turned to him, eyes wide, and nodded in gratitude. Together, they fought their way deeper into the outpost, Mark and Tlani leading the charge with a synergy that had grown instinctive. Each time Mark's strength faltered, Tlani was there, her mental energy bolstering him, infusing him with a sense of calm and focus. Likewise, when the psychic attacks began to take a toll on Tlani, Mark was there to defend her, standing as an unwavering shield. Finally, they reached the heart of the compound, where the Separatist leader awaited, his face twisted in anger at the sight of the human and Illyran fighting side by side. "You would defy your own kind for an outsider?" He spat at Tlani, his voice filled with disdain. "We were never meant to be aligned with these beings. They will bring ruin to our world." But Tlani stood firm, her voice unwavering. "Perhaps it is you who bring ruin. Humans may be different, but they have shown us a strength we never knew. We are stronger together." The Separatist leader lunged at her, but Mark intercepted him, their bodies clashing with force. The leader fought viciously, but Mark's determination, fueled by his bond with Tlani and his belief in their cause, held steady. With a final, powerful push, he overpowered the leader, ending the battle. In the aftermath, the Separatists retreated, realizing their leader was defeated. The remaining Illyrian forces secured the area, and the threat to the outpost was finally over. As the smoke cleared, Mark and Tlani stood side by side, exhausted but victorious. Tlani looked at him, her face a mixture of relief and admiration. "You've saved more than just our outpost today, Mark. You've shown us that strength and hope aren't just human traits, they're universal." Mark smiled, feeling the weight of their victory settle around him. "We did this together, Tlani, and I think that's something worth fighting for." Back at the space station, word of their successful defense spread quickly, sparking newfound respect and admiration between humans and Illyrians. The coalition, inspired by their alliance, began developing joint training programs and exchange missions, eager to build on the foundation that Mark and Tlani had set. In the days that followed, Mark and Tlani continued their work together, their bond deepening with each new challenge. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, there would be other battles, other threats, but they faced them with hope and trust, certain that together, they could overcome anything. And as they looked out over the stars, they knew their journey was only just beginning, united in purpose and in friendship, a beacon of strength and resilience for their worlds and for the galaxy beyond.